Did you ever hear the sound of someone trying to break into your house like they're unlocking a vending machine? That slow, smug jingling like they're trying to finesse a safe instead of commit a felony? That's what woke me up. And no, it wasn't some strung-out thief or lost pizza guy. It was Darla Windsor, our neighborhood's self-appointed queen of order, hunched over my front door like she'd misplaced her kingdom. The woman had a key ring the size of a rodeo belt buckle and the confidence of someone who thought the law came laminated. She wasn't panicking. No, she was muttering to herself like the lock had betrayed her personally. She'd try one key, jiggle it, curse under her breath, then move to the next like she was scrolling through a playlist called Suburban Delusions Volume 1. And through the blinds I watched her gray polo shirt crisp enough to cut glass, bun tight enough to vibrate, and realized this woman genuinely believed she had a right to be there. Like she'd bought my house at an auction I forgot to attend. Leave a comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're into real feeling stories full of twists, justice, and just enough HOA insanity to make you laugh and gasp, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story takes it up a notch, and believe me, the next surprise, you'll be talking about it all week. Now, I should explain, my name's Gordon Blake, retired firefighter, proud owner of this 2-acre spread in Arizona, and currently on year 3 of peaceful, HOA-free living. Or so I thought. After 30 years of fighting fires, I thought nothing could surprise me. But I never trained for a woman trying to enforce fictional neighborhood law with a bundle of master keys she probably stole from a hotel janitor. Inside, my daughter Erica, off-duty federal marshal, was sipping coffee and scrolling her phone in the kitchen, blissfully unaware her father's front door was under siege by a woman who treats clipboards like congressional subpoenas. Erica's instincts kicked in quick once I pointed toward the window. She took one look and said, "Dad, you want me to handle this with the badge or the coffee spoon?" I told her to hang back. I wanted to see how deep Darla's delusion really ran. I opened the door mid-jiggle. Darla flinched like I'd caught her shoplifting at a church bake sale. "Oh, Mr. Blake," she stammered, like I was the one in the wrong for answering my own door. "I'm performing a quarterly safety compliance check on behalf of the HOA. She said it like she was quoting scripture. I leaned against the frame and nodded real slow. "And you're performing that with whose keys exactly? Because they sure as sin ain't mine." Her smile flickered like a busted porch light. "Well, most responsible residents have provided keys to the HOA for emergency inspections." Her voice trailed off as she realized I wasn't buying it. Not the laminated badge she'd made herself, not the fabricated neighborhood covenant, and definitely not her threat of legal action if I didn't cooperate. I'd seen less fiction in a science museum. Meanwhile, Erica was filming the whole exchange through the front blinds, quiet as a cat but ready to pounce. The more she talked, the more absurd it got. According to her, my mailbox was the wrong height, my rose bushes were unauthorized vegetation, and my porch chairs violated the visual cohesion agreement of the neighborhood. Now, mind you, there is no HOA here. That's half the reason I moved in. I bought this land because I wanted peace, not paperwork, but Darla was operating on her own set of rules, ones she probably printed off the internet between Pilates classes and HOA cosplay meetings. Her eyes darted as I called her bluff, and when I mentioned trespassing laws, she pulled out a compliance document she'd clearly made in Microsoft Word. I closed the door, but not the case. Inside, Erica was already making a digital file. "Dad," she said, "this woman's building a playhouse out of fear and fake rules. She's got keys to houses she has no legal right to access, she's conducting unsanctioned inspections, and now she's using intimidation to assert control. This isn't some petty neighbor with boundary issues. This is textbook fraudulent impersonation, and it's probably bigger than just you." I nodded. I'd seen control freaks before. Commanders, fire chiefs, HOA Karens with too much time and too little training. But Darla had a different flavor. She was running her own version of Homeland Security, minus the credentials, oversight, or sanity. The difference between concerned and controlling is paperwork, and hers wouldn't pass a third-grade history project. But I had something she didn't. A daughter who could spot a felony through a fogged-up window, and me, I had a whole lot of time, a folder full of receipts, and a front porch built for battles. 2 hours after trying to crack my front door like a combination lock, Darla Windsor came back dressed like she was headed to court to sue the entire neighborhood. Same stiff polo, now paired with a blazer and a folder thick enough to block sunlight. You ever see someone show up to your house with that legal authority posture, only to realize they printed their entire case in Comic Sans? She had papers, lots of them, and announced before I could say good morning that I was in flagrant violation of Section 8, Article 3 of the Community Covenant. That sounded serious, until I remembered we don't have a community covenant. Darla must have figured if she said it loud enough I'd forget how homeownership works. I didn't, but I let her continue, because a person will tell you everything you need to know if you let them think they're in charge, and this lady was running for mayor of Fantasyville. She flipped through her folder like she was auditioning for courtroom theater. 11 citations? 11! From my fence stain being 2 shades too rustic, to overgrowth of unapproved garden foliage, whatever that means. She even flagged my shed for being visually dissonant with the roofline. I asked her if she'd brought a tape measure or just pure imagination. She looked at me like I'd just disrespected the Supreme Court. I held the stack of paper like it was radioactive. "Darla," I said, "this reads like a fantasy novel for bureaucrats." Her eyes twitched, but she kept going, citing fabricated regulations with all the confidence of a carnival psychic. Erica, still watching from behind the blinds, started filming again, because we both knew we were witnessing something uniquely unhinged and very possibly criminal. Then came the threats. Not subtle ones, either. Fines totaling $2,800, 0 cents, forced remediation within 48 hours, and possible community board escalation if I didn't comply. I asked, calmly, for a copy of the signed HOA agreement that proved I'd ever opted into this circus. Her mouth worked for a second like she was chewing invisible gum. Then she pivoted, real slick, to saying that compliance is expected of all residents regardless of signature. Her precedent? What was this? HOA Supreme Court? Her logic was like Jenga played with spaghetti noodles. But here's the thing. Some folks hear someone in a blazer with a clipboard throw around official-sounding nonsense and they fold. Fast. And Darla knew it. She wasn't building her power on legality. She was building it on fear. I found out just how deep that fear ran later that afternoon, took a walk to cool off, and stopped by Monsieur Langford's place. He's 79, still tends his late wife's rose garden like it's sacred ground, only the roses were gone. Just a square of turned soil and a man standing beside it looking 10 years older. "She said they were invasive," he whispered. "Said if I didn't dig them up, I'd be fined and reported." I didn't know what was worse, the lie or the fact that he believed it. Down the block, a nurse named Marissa had installed a $500 0 cents security camera system because Darla claimed it was mandatory for single parents under HOA Community Watch Protocol. That's not a thing. That's not close to a thing. But she'd bought it literally out of fear. Darla had found the perfect ecosystem, a neighborhood full of polite, hard-working folks too tired to question what felt like authority. By the time I got home, Erica had labeled and uploaded every clip we'd captured to a secure drive. She was no longer just helping out her dad. This was personal now. "She's not running an HOA, Dad," she said, tapping her screen. "She's running a soft coup. It's like watching a scam artist pretend to be the fire chief at a fire that doesn't exist." Her tone had changed. Less casual, more clipped, like she'd just flipped her internal switch from daughter to law enforcement. "Fear," she said, "is the cheapest tool in the authoritarian toolbox, and she's using it like duct tape." I nodded. Darla had crossed the line from annoying to dangerous, and Erica had just decided we were going to draw a new one in permanent ink. Because when fear becomes policy, you either enforce your rights or watch them get composted with the rose bushes. Sometimes authority doesn't come from a title or a clipboard. It comes from silence, intimidation, and the hope that you'll be too tired to push back. But the moment you ask for proof, the whole illusion starts to crumble. In a world full of Darla Windsors, the lesson is simple. Don't confuse volume for validity. And never hand over your power just because someone printed a badge at home. Stay close, because what Darla tried next wasn't just delusional. It was criminal, and she picked the wrong daughter-father duo to mess with. Later that evening, Erica and I sat on the porch as the sun sank behind the mesquite trees, casting long shadows across the gravel. She looked over at me, brow furrowed, and asked, "Why are you so fired up about this, Dad? I mean, I get that Darla's a piece of work, but you're treating this like it's personal." I didn't answer right away. It's funny how certain questions have a way of reaching behind your ribs and pulling out memories you thought you'd locked up. I took a slow sip of my coffee and stared at the horizon like it might give me an excuse not to answer. But Erica deserved the truth. "Because," I said finally, "this isn't the first time a clipboard and a made-up rule book tore apart my home. The last one nearly killed your mother." And just like that, silence fell. Heavy, honest, and overdue. Back in Florida, decades ago, we bought a little coastal place with a picket fence and naive dreams. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Then came the HOA. Different faces, same uniform. Power by paperwork. They fined us for non-uniform mulch. Threatened us over a mailbox that tilted after a storm. Your mom, she started losing sleep, getting sick. Constantly worried about which rule we were breaking just by living. That stress led to a hospital trip. Cardiac complications, they said, the kind triggered by anxiety and exhaustion. We sold the house after that, but we never got her peace back. She passed 2 years later. "Erica," I said, voice quieter now, "these people don't show up with guns. They show up with fear dressed as protocol. And they count on good folks being too polite to push back." That's when I saw something shift in her eyes. The daughter who came to visit was gone. In her place was someone who had just found her cause. The next morning, Erica printed off a few blank witness forms from her work laptop and we started making rounds. Half the neighborhood had stories. Some handed over keys because Darla said it was emergency access protocol. Others thought it was for insurance inspections. One elderly widow even recalled Darla warning her that her home wouldn't be on the rescue list unless she complied. One by one, it all painted a picture, not of a leader, but of a predator with a Darla wasn't enforcing safety. She was building an empire, one scared neighbor at a time. Erica compared it to a con artist running a compliance cult. The only rule was obedience, and the only truth was hers. You could see the relief in people's faces when they realized they weren't the only ones who'd been fooled. But that relief came with anger, too. And anger, when shared, becomes momentum. What struck us most was how calculated Darla had been. She didn't just knock on doors, she kept notes: who lived alone, who had mobility issues, who traveled often. One single mother told us Darla had asked about her work schedule, just for community watch coordination. Another man said he caught Darla near his garage camera but dismissed it as a glitch, until we showed him a photo of her holding his gate key. Erica called it what it was: systematic profiling. But worse, it was illegal. She'd crossed into Privacy Act territory without even blinking. And it didn't stop at key collecting. She was tracking habits, logging patterns. It was less like HOA enforcement and more like low-budget espionage. Erica was already prepping a federal complaint draft, but I could tell something was bothering her more than the law. "She's doing this to people who remind me of Mom," she said, "and that makes this personal for me, too." Then came the call. I was finishing up notes from our neighbor interviews when my phone buzzed. It was Tom from 2 houses down. "Hey, Gordon, just wanted you to know Darla stopped by this afternoon. She said you've been threatening her, that you've got some vendetta against her and might be dangerous." Sounded real serious. My stomach dropped. Not out of fear, but fury. Erica heard the call and didn't even blink. "She's flipping the script," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Classic manipulation move. Paint you as the aggressor so she has a reason to escalate." The air got real still after that. You know the kind, right before a monsoon or a reckoning. And we both knew in that moment the reckoning was about to arrive, dressed in sirens and sealed envelopes. Stay close. Because what Darla does next, it's her boldest move yet, and it's the one that finally cracks everything wide open. The call came in around 10:42 a.m. I know because I looked at the clock right as Darla's silver SUV slowed in front of my house, like a surveillance van trying not to look suspicious. She sat there for about 5 minutes, phone pressed to her ear, free hand slicing the air with theatrical frustration. Erica and I watched from the kitchen like we were observing a wildlife documentary, the suburban narcissist in her native habitat, when she finally hung up and drove off. Erica nodded. "She just called 911, she said, and I'd bet every key on her ring she told them you're violent and uncooperative." I looked at my coffee, still warm, still untouched. "Well," I said, "I guess it's time to welcome the cavalry." We didn't panic. We prepared. Erica moved fast. She clipped her badge to her belt, not the plastic kind Darla waves around like a sorority paddle, but the real deal, federal marshal. She printed a copy of the property deed, set up a tripod camera by the window, and made sure her body cam was charged and running. "Let's be perfectly polite," she said, "but bulletproof." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Darla thought she was walking into a trap of her own making. In reality, she'd just triggered the moment where all her fantasy crumbles under the weight of facts. Erica checked the recording one more time and gave me a look. "You just sip your coffee and look harmless. I'll handle the law." Honestly, I wasn't even insulted. I was proud. 10 minutes later, we heard the sirens. 2 cruisers rolled in, slow, lights flashing but no rush. Darla reappeared like she'd been waiting behind a bush for her cue. She ran up to the officers with the urgency of someone reporting a hostage situation, pointing at my house like it was a meth lab, shouting about non-compliance and aggressive behavior. From the window, we could see one officer taking notes, the other nodding slowly in that trained let-them-talk way. Erica waited until they reached the porch before opening the door, and when she did, it was quiet, calm, surgical. "Good morning, officers," she said, voice steady. "I'm Erica Blake, Federal Marshal, badge 6127. This is my father's home. We've been expecting you." The pause that followed was glorious. The lead officer blinked, took a step back, and then smiled like someone just handed him a missing puzzle piece. "Marshal Blake," he said, suddenly a lot more formal. Behind him, Darla's entire face rearranged itself. Shock, panic, confusion. You could see the circuits shorting out as she tried to calculate how her flimsy HOA power stack could possibly outrank a federal badge. "This must be a misunderstanding," she stammered. "He's a danger to the neighborhood. He's refused inspections. I have documentation." She fumbled through her folder and handed the officers what I can only describe as the legal equivalent of a Pinterest craft project. Letterhead featuring a Microsoft Word tree logo, 5 different fonts, and one glaring typo. Neighborhood Safety Mandates. Erica raised an eyebrow. "Did she laminate this?" she whispered. The officers began asking questions, real ones. "Do you have signed HOA contracts from Mr. Blake? Do you have permission slips for these spare keys? Where's your legal charter or homeowner vote record?" Darla sputtered. She deflected. She pointed fingers like she was trying to swat invisible flies, but she couldn't produce a single real document. Her empire of printed delusions started cracking under every question. One officer opened the evidence bag and dropped in the infamous key ring. 23 keys, all tagged with addresses, he muttered. It's a lot of access for someone without legal standing. Erica leaned toward him. "Might want to start asking the neighbors," she said. "You'll find out just how far this goes." The officer nodded, and just like that, the narrative flipped. When false authority meets real accountability, it doesn't just fall apart. It evaporates. The louder someone insists on control without proof, the more fragile their power usually is. This part reminds us that preparation beats panic, and truth wears a badge that doesn't need to shout. Real authority doesn't come from clipboards, it comes from clarity, evidence, and knowing who you are. Stick around, because once the neighbors start talking, the truth doesn't just come out, it marches. And Darla's about to learn what happens when a community realizes it's been held hostage by a counterfeit queen. By the next morning, word had spread faster than wildfire through dry brush. Darla Windsor, the self-declared HOA queen of our quiet little cul-de-sac, had been escorted out in handcuffs, and the neighborhood didn't mourn. People started showing up on my lawn, not with torches and pitchforks, but with folding chairs, casseroles, and something even rarer, the courage to speak. One by one, the stories came out. The older couple from across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Halprin, told us she once let herself into their home while he was napping. She said it was a surprise compliance sweep, took photos of their furniture layout, and told them their rug corner posed a mobility hazard. And just like that, the whole facade cracked, because when fear breaks, so does silence. Marissa, the single mom who worked nights at the hospital, shared how she picked up 3 extra shifts to pay for the security camera Darla said was mandated for all vulnerable households. Turns out that mandate was printed on the same fake HOA letterhead Erica had already submitted into evidence. Her 8-year-old daughter Ava added that the scary lady told her she couldn't draw hopscotch on the sidewalk anymore. It disrupted visual uniformity. Let that sink in. A grown woman policing sidewalk chalk. Darla hadn't just been enforcing fake rules. She'd been shrinking joy, pruning expression like it was a weed. It wasn't about order. It was about control, dressed in pastel authority. Then came Brian, the father of 3 who looked like he hadn't slept in days. She said my grill was a code violation, he muttered, voice tight. Said the smoke didn't flow in a compliant direction. I sold it. My boys loved that grill. You could see the shame on his face, not because he'd believed her, but because he'd let her belief become his truth. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't need a badge. It just needs a moment of doubt and a voice that sounds sure. Darla didn't just enforce imaginary codes. She wrote them in people's heads and made them doubt their own front porch. That's what made her dangerous. Not the keys, not the threats, but the silence she installed between neighbors. That afternoon, Erica helped folks start filing restitution claims. She walked them through their rights like she was peeling back years of psychological wallpaper. A few hours later, someone suggested we do something symbolic. Let's bring back Margaret's garden, Mrs. Halprin said, gently patting my arm. And suddenly it was all hands on deck. Shovels, gloves, seed packets, even old photographs of the rose beds my wife once tended. No one asked permission, no one filed a request. We just did it. And in that moment, the neighborhood stopped being a collection of isolated, polite households and became something closer to a community. It wasn't just a garden we were planting, it was a reclamation of joy, a visual rebellion, a living, breathing no to everything Darla tried to bury. As we were wrapping up, one of the officers returned to give Erica an update. They'd searched Darla's home with a warrant. What they found? Chilling. Files on over 30 homes, schedules, handwritten notes about routines, deliveries, even babysitter names, audio recordings, photos, some taken from inside people's homes. Her rules weren't guidelines, they were roots, wrapped tight around people's hearts, controlling how they watered their flowers and opened their door. Erica looked at me and said, Dad, this wasn't just trespassing, this was psychological warfare dressed as neighborhood concern, and she was right. But here's the good news. Truth spreads, too. And now that we'd torn up the weeds, we had room to grow something better. Don't blink, because the final chapter isn't just justice served. It's Darla's entire fake empire collapsing in public view, and trust me, you'll want front row seats. Turns out Darla Windsor's history was as manicured as her lies, just not in the way she'd hoped. When the police dug deeper, they uncovered something that made our entire neighborhood let out a collective, exhausted, of course. She had a restraining order out of Pima County from 2 years back for, you guessed it, impersonating an HOA president and harassing a group of retirees in a mobile home community. Apparently, her brand of civic leadership included threatening to tow homes off their own lots. That history, once sealed tight in legal folders, came tumbling out like forgotten holiday decorations. Brittle, ridiculous, and long overdue for a public airing, and with it, the whole image Darla had laminated began to peel. The formal charges came in a neat little stack: burglary, impersonation of a public official, stalking, forgery, and unlawful surveillance. Erica read them out loud like she was going through an old grocery list. Fake title, fake documents, illegal entry, unauthorized data collection. She paused, looked at me, and added, "She's one Photoshop session away from federal time." Darla's courtroom defense, however, was the cherry on top. Standing straight back and indignant, she declared to the judge, "I laminated everything. I wasn't breaking the law. I was helping the neighborhood." It was such a spectacular misunderstanding of legality and plastic sheeting that even the bailiff had to look down to keep from laughing. Her downfall wasn't just about what she did. It was how earnestly she thought her delusion was the law. The judge didn't buy the performance. He called her actions a campaign of coercion cloaked in faux governance, which, in layman's terms, means, "Sit down, ma'am." He sentenced her to 18 months in county jail, banned her from holding any leadership or administrative role in any housing, neighborhood, or property management organization for life, and ordered restitution to be paid to every neighbor she intimidated, manipulated, or swindled. Her reign of pastel tyranny was officially over. What she called community standards, the court renamed criminal harassment with a stationary budget. She left the courtroom not with her head held high, but with her keys confiscated, her fanny pack of citations in a plastic evidence bag, and her legacy filed under L for liability. Back home, the change was instant and almost absurdly beautiful. Fences were repainted in wild colors. One family chose teal just because Darla once called it socially aggressive. Kids returned to hopscotch. The single moms unhooked their mandatory cameras and used the refund to buy pizza and paint for their porches. Mr. Langford brought out his grill, and we all gathered for a block cookout that doubled as a quiet rebellion. Erica was honored by the sheriff's office for her handling of the case, but she waved it off like it was just another Tuesday. "Honestly, Dad," she said, "I'm just glad you didn't end up on the 6 o'clock news in handcuffs for confronting a fake inspector." I grinned. Only thing I'd laminate is a sandwich menu. That evening we sat on the porch, just the two of us, watching the last of the orange light fade behind the cottonwoods. It felt different now, lighter, as if someone had vacuumed the tension right out of the soil. "You know," I said, sipping from a chipped mug, "that HOA? It wasn't a homeowners association, it was her ego in bullet points." Erica nodded, stretching her legs. "And now it's filed under C for convicted." We laughed, the kind of laugh that comes when the storm finally passes, and as I looked out over the freshly planted garden, Margaret's roses returning like old friends, I thought about what it really takes to protect peace. It's not anger, it's not shouting, it's being ready. It's documentation, it's speaking up when others go quiet. And sometimes, it's laminating the truth and hanging it on your front gate before someone else shows up with lies on plastic. As Erica and I sat there under that fading Arizona sky, the quiet wasn't just peaceful, it was earned. The kind of silence that only comes after you've faced down the storm, cleared the wreckage, and decided your life is worth defending. Not with fists or fury, but with truth, clarity, and the kind of humor that keeps your dignity intact. I thought about Margaret, about how she used to say, "You can't grow roses in fear," and she was right. You have to protect peace the same way you protect a home. Not with fences, but with the courage to say, "Not here, not today." This story wasn't just about a fake HOA president or a clipboard warrior with a printer and a power complex. It was about something deeper. How fear, left unchecked, can turn good people into silent passengers in their own lives, and how one act of resistance, one calm question, "Where's the signature?" can unravel an entire empire built on intimidation. We learned that laminated lies don't hold up in court, that real authority doesn't need to shout, and that your home isn't just a structure, it's your sovereignty. And in the end, all it took was truth, family, and a few neighbors brave enough to step outside and say, enough. So if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of the value of standing tall, staying sharp, and planting your flag with quiet pride, leave a comment below and let us know what hit home for you. What would you have done if Darla had shown up on your porch? If you believe in stories where justice wins, truth speaks louder than fear, and even retired folks with coffee mugs can be heroes, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us. Because tomorrow's story? Let's just say, the HOA tries to ban a service animal, and the animal bites back. Stick around, the fences are coming down, and the truth's just getting started. All right, y'all, now it's your turn. What kind of stories do you want to hear next? HOA horror stories, landlord drama, workplace revenge with a twist of justice? Comment below and tell me what wild tale you want to see brought to life. I read every single one, and trust me, your ideas might just inspire the next jaw-dropping episode. So go ahead. Drop your story wish list in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the ones you helped create.